Today is May the 1st, and today I decided to do a little bit of work to understand what the tax implications are of going to either Texas, going to Spain, staying in Calgary. So, what I did is I created some criteria and I said, okay, if I want to create a business that generates $500,000 in taxable net income from the business, what is my tax burden? And then out of that $500,000 that I earn, if I wanted to personally take $200,000 as personal taxable income, what's the tax implication of that? I used my good pal, Chat GPT, to figure this out and decided that I would use the math based on earning in that home currency. So, for example, in Texas, I'm earning in USD. So therefore, my math should be in USD. If I'm in Canada, I should earn in Canadian dollars. My tax should be in Canadian dollars. And then same thing with Spain. If I want to earn in euros, I'm going to pay in euros. And so I didn't do the math to figure out what it looks like on a comparable basis, because as you'll see in a couple of minutes, it really informed my thinking a little bit here and helped me understand kind of what I got to figure out next in this journey towards figuring out if I can spend a bunch of time putting a business in the US, spending a little bit of time in Canada, and then spending some time in Spain. So here's kind of how the math shakes out. Um, in Texas, if I had $500,000 worth of taxable business income, it looks like I'm going to pay about 21.75% on that, or about $108,000. In Canada, for that same amount of $500,000 in taxable income, it looks like I'm going to pay about 23% or 115,000. And in Spain, if I was to earn $500,000 of taxable business income, the taxes on that would be about 25%. So 21.75 in Texas, 23% in Calgary, and 25% in Spain. So that in and of itself was interesting. So roughly around that like 20 to 25%. So then on the $200,000 that I take out personally, it looks like I would pay about 11.27% in Texas. I would end up paying on that $200,000, I would pay 11.4% in Canada. And in Spain, I would pay about 17%. So kind of net, 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 net on $200,000. Of course, I got to do like some checking on this math, but this is less about the math and more about the concept. So 11% in Texas, 11% in Calgary, and 17% in Spain. So overall, it looks like the decision to go to Texas would be roughly the same as just staying where I am. Going to Spain, it looks like I would end up giving up more of the income that I'm able to generate. And then it kind of begs the question, if roughly all things are equal, and it isn't necessarily a tax decision, then what am I left with? And I think what I'm left with is, okay, it can't be just about money, because the money roughly kind of looks the same. And it goes back to what I said in my last episode, which was it has more to do with watching something great become less great, and knowing that maybe our taxes could have been lower in Canada. Maybe the tax credits could have been better. Maybe there could have been more incentives to do things here in Canada, but that isn't the case. Pretty equal to Texas, as it turns out. But if I was in Texas and I could earn $500,000 taxable with a business and then $200,000 personally, I think I would enjoy that more in Texas. I think the culture of Texas, maybe the business community in Texas, the sheer size of the population is appealing. And so here's what I've discovered in the last couple of minutes. I've discovered that it's not a math exercise. If I want to go and spend 6 months in the US, I want to spend 90 days in Spain, and I want to spend another 90 days in Canada. I'm not doing it for tax reasons, because the math kind of is the math, and I could kind of slide the dollars one way or another. Probably the math changes as to generate what's this $500,000 in taxable business income, call it, I don't know, a 20% net margin, which is I think, pretty aggressive, but the right number. That means you have about a $2.5 million business, or a business that's generating about $200,000 a month in gross revenue. And that kind of business can support a small team. And anyway, so it's not about the math. That's a big realization for me. So when I think about the election results and I think about the future of Canada, I was talking to Lisa this morning, and it seems like it continues just to circle around this idea that in my head, I'm just having a hard time reconciling that I'm watching our country incur more debt, which is still kind of on side when you look at the percentage of our debt as compared to our GDP. Um, but the productivity level in Canada has dropped dramatically. The number of people that are working for public service versus private companies continues to rise, which is a trend that Spain has been on for decades now. And so the ambition and motivation and hope is kind of just being sucked out of this system, and you're left with this why bother attitude. And maybe in my head I continue to think that the grass would be greener in Texas, but the truth is it's probably just a different shade of green. Quite frankly, it's not more or less green as much as it is just a different shade of green. And I know that someone listening to this might say, well, that's the same thing, but for some reason in my head it sounds a little bit different. So I think kind of where I'm at today is, given that the math is all the same, I think it comes down to personal preference. I shared yesterday that going to Spain for 3 months out of the year on a visitor's visa is more of a life work project. We can be involved in a really great community outreach program through Montessori preschools that is just getting off the ground, and it seems to check all of the boxes for us with our faith, with our skills, with our talents, with our desire to go hang out in a completely different culture than what we're used to every single day. So I still think that's important. I think wrestling with opening a business in the US, I don't know. Do I have to come up with a better reason than I would just like to work in a more ambitious and hopeful environment? I don't know. I don't know. But that's kind of where I'm sitting with it today. Canada is still a great country compared to many others. I just can't get past the why bother element, because I think that the moment we're in right now, I think taxes are going to go up. I think spending will continue to be poor. I think the healthcare system, even though our family doesn't use it in the next stage of my life, I'll probably use it more than I ever have, and it doesn't seem to be very stable or supportive. So I don't know. I mean, it's not about math, then it has to be about something else. And right now, I think it's about the personal challenge of doing it. So opening a business in another country, maybe two other countries, it's kind of hard. I like doing hard things, but I also think I'd like to try working in an environment where I have this idea in my head that people have some more energy and some ambition. I'll just take a little shortcut here to explain where that opinion comes from. When I was in Spain, and we've been there a couple times for quite a few months over the last couple of years, and you can just feel, everyone who knows me has already heard this, but you can just feel the lack of ambition and drive that is there. Spain is a pretty tough country. There are obviously successful business owners, as there are in every country. And I need to keep that in mind, because it's not necessarily about your circumstances as much as it is what do you do with your circumstances. But in the time that I've spent there, you can certainly get a sense of resignation that people are tired, they're burnt out. There's the boomers, there's Gen X, and there's millennials who all have come after the fall of Franco the dictator's death. And it seems like the country just became very hard and didn't the citizens just didn't want to be bothered with stuff. And so the government, being a socialist government, really took control, and the only employment outside of tourism and some industry that was available was really to work in public service. And so what happens is you get a large percentage of the population working in public service, which I think by definition isn't super gratifying work for someone like me. And then you have everybody else, and everybody else maybe has a business, a cafe, they fix appliances, maybe they work in a restaurant, but they really do just enough work to pay their bills, because there's no incentive, there's no need to do more than that. And so when I got to experience that firsthand, and hear people talk about the European lifestyle, I certainly understand what they're saying, that people work just to be able to live. They don't live to work, which in the United States, from the time that I've spent, certainly in California, you get a real sense of drive and motivation and ambition, and like anything is possible. And then you come to Canada, and we are literally just moving through the beginnings of where I think Spain has ended up. And so I guess I just really struggle with that. I think about our kids. I think about the next generation. I have 5 kids, so presumably we're going to get a bunch of grandkids out of that. But where are my kids gonna flourish? Where are they going to be able to do really well? So far, none of them have an interest in working in public service. All of them appear to want to work in private enterprise. And so I think you've got to go where the action is. And I'm just not convinced that Canada right now is where the action is. So um, stay tuned. Today, if I had to stay or go, the answer is I would go.